Hello and welcome to another special Unsourced Wall Presents. This week I want to talk about Jurassic Park, and well, more specifically the Jurassic World trilogy, and even more specifically, just how much potential that trilogy wasted when compared against the concurrently released Netflix tie-in cartoon Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, a show that just recently aired its 5th and final season, and basically stands as a shining example of everything the Jurassic World trilogy could have been, should have been, and ultimately squandered any chance of being. And let's break it down point by point. Part 1. Story. Now, soft reboots, or requels as the new Scream movie would like to call it, are basically reboots/remakes cast in the likeness of being actual sequels, but in reality just being excuses to retell the same story and plot and just cashing in on the title as much as any remake would. Jurassic World was sold on the idea of being this totally new experience, this development, this evolution of the concept, finally seeing the park as it is open, and seeing how different things would be. But in effect, it just goes through the same motions of being Jurassic Park 1, again, even down to the POV characters. In the original film, Heaven's grandchildren are given special access to the park because of their parents' divorce. And World decides to not even try to be truly different with regard to the whole the park is open to the public and has thousands of guests of all walks of life thing, and instead just does the exact same thing, with POV kids who are the nephews of the park manager who are being given special access because of their parents' divorce. It's galling. This is where Camp Cretaceous first starts to shine. The show not only begins with actually hinting to how the world has changed, with Jurassic World merch and games being a big deal and a big part of the background, but it also makes the main character a regular kid, like a regular kid who wanted to go to this amusement park because he wants to have fun at a public amusement park. Sure, you could say that him winning a contest that gets him special VIP access kind of waylays that everyman angle, but it also puts into sharper relief how a regular person would feel at that park and have fun in it, and not just rich folks with family connections. Again, in fact, the rest of the cast being those kinds of rich folks creates a clear contrast that makes the main character that much more distinct. And it's shocking that this is the first time it's been done in the franchise, and it was in this kind of cast-off CGI cartoon tie-in that no one really pays attention to. The next feather in Camp Cretaceous' cap is a bit divisive, and I'm of two minds about it. It's how each part of the World saga actually shows the park. World has a nicely decent montage, but it's nothing truly thorough. But Camp Cretaceous spends almost half of its first season basically being a regular standard kids cartoon about kids at a summer camp that, just so happens to have dinosaurs in it, which means that when stuff actually starts to go to hell, you feel more of the impact. But on the other hand, it does leave the wrong first impression after you have to sit through like 4 to 5 episodes of really bog standard kids cartoon cliches and jokes. So it's a bit give and take. But let's move ahead. Part 2. The scope. The Jurassic World trilogy has now kind of become infamous for how much it attempts to ponder and reflect and find depth without really doing much or saying much of anything at all. It tries to be more cerebral and introspective, but it's more just platitudes that then divert into really wacky and silly shenanigans that don't mix together well. You can't really have a movie that wants to make a statement about the nature of life or the soul, and also a zany haunted house adventure. It just doesn't work, and the movies never really feel like they have a strong foundation. Camp Cretaceous, on the other hand, has the benefit of, being a kid's cartoon. I don't want to sound reductive, but truth be told, there are these lower expectations on what kind of tone and drama a show like this can have. Having this dorky, comic relief character and a lovable, way too cute, way too cartoony dinosaur sidekick, sure, that's something we expect from a show like this, and the show, delivers on that. It has it. But then taking those same characters and putting them through a crucible of survival against the Carnosaurus as they slowly go insane from having to go into survival mode, now that's taking things to the next level. And the show, especially its first 3 seasons, continually tries to push that format in its own way. It takes its simple and understandable premise and fleshes it out and builds upon it, making it its actual foundation. The way these kids have survived and the way they grow through every challenge and trial is just more interesting and engaging than, but what if the animals are like me kind of stuff you see in the Jurassic World saga. And the cartoon even does more of that too. The kids love the dinos, even if they're trying to avoid being eaten by them. And having that explored, in actual seasons with time and rumination and development, is just more interesting and offers a wider range of emotional depth. And again, not to sound reductive, But if a kid's cartoon on Netflix that they didn't even market and just did to fulfill some sort of contractual obligation could do something like this, more than a multi-billion-dollar live-action film franchise could, then that's saying something. Part 3. Making sense of nonsense. Of course, the show isn't perfect. It can still feel a bit awkward tonally, as it goes from hijinks to people actually being eaten by dinosaurs. But the worst aspects of the show, in my opinion, end up being the way it has to set up stuff from the actual live-action trilogy. An entire subplot about how the prologue from Fallen Kingdom happens, or even Dachshund being involved with creating dino hybrids that we end up seeing like variants of in Dominion. Stuff that is patently silly and does feel jammed in. But it also means that the show gives a lot of these ideas more credence and puts more effort into making these sound like actual plot points than the movies ever do. Like, hey, that whole we can tame dinosaurs by shining a little laser beam light that takes up way too much time in the last 2 movies? The show actually takes that and instead goes, alright, let's actually brainwash and lobotomize dinosaurs, which is exactly as silly, but it takes a lot less effort to accept, because if you're going to be that goofy, at least put some thought into it. So it's a real shame that this show is the overlooked one in this entire franchise so far. Overall, even if the show does get a little strained, especially in the last 2 seasons when it goes into Dominion Prep Overdrive and I think outgrows its own premise, it's still worth checking out. I don't know if many would consider it a worthy successor to the Jurassic Park name, but to me this is clearly the best thing in the franchise since the original film and novel. Don't want to go into too many spoilers because it is definitely worth checking out, and even managed to land its feet on the ending, which is more than a few franchises can say these days, and Dominion itself can't even claim to even come close to it. It's a great way to, I think, personally, cap off the franchise. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed. If you haven't seen Camp Cretaceous, let me know below in the comments if you're going to check it out. And if you have, let me know what you thought. I thought it was really good. 9 out of 10 overall. And yes, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you again next time.